Jack the Ripper, the most brutal serial killer in history.
He covered the mouth, exposed the throat, cut them twice, left to right. 1, 2.
Savage, sadistic.
Poor lady was gutted like an animal.
He's gotten away with murder for over 100 years. Now, one of America's greatest cold case investigators has reopened the file.
For any detective, this is truly the Holy Grail.
Uncovering a trail of new evidence that leads him right here. The hunt for Jack the Ripper starts in an unusual place. New York City.
I've seen people with their heads cut off and put in other people's laps. I've seen infants thrown down garbage chutes. People buried alive. I've seen some of the most gruesome stuff you can imagine.
Ed Norris is an investigator who spent his whole life solving horrific crimes.
In 24 years of being a cop, you see everything. It's a nasty business, but solving these unsolvable crimes is what makes me tick.
Veteran homicide detective, founder of the NYPD's Cold Case Squad. He solved his first 27 murders in just 6 weeks. Now he's facing an even tougher challenge, a 125-year-old cold case.
It's one of the most shocking cases, not just in New York City's history, but in American history.
In 1891, prostitute Carrie Brown was murdered on Manhattan's Lower East Side.
The neighborhood was one of the roughest areas in New York City at the time of the killing. And as you can see, in over 100 years, not changed a lot for the better. You do not want to be walking around here by yourself at night.
A century ago, prostitutes openly worked the bars here. Among them, 56-year-old Carrie Brown, a failed actress the locals called Old Shakespeare.
So this is the spot. A little over 100 years ago, this is where Carrie Brown was murdered.
11 p.m., April 23rd, 1891. Carrie Brown takes a customer back to a Fleabag hotel that stood on this corner.
The piece of a hotel. It was a rundown brothel on a street of rundown brothels.
Back then, it's $0.25 for the room, 50 cents a trick. But on this night, a stranger will put Carrie Brown out of business for good. The case is never solved. The only clue the killer leaves is his uniquely disturbed method of murder.
It makes me sick to think that someone got away with murder on my streets even 100 years later. I want to find the guy that did this and expose him.
There's no forensics, no witnesses. All Ed has to crack this case is a 125-year-old paper trail.
I've reviewed hundreds of cold cases, and the first thing you do in every cold case is pull a case folder and read it.
New York's Municipal Archives. Whatever's left of the Carrie Brown file is here.
This is the death certificates for New York County at the time. As she is, Carrie Brown, 1891.
Carrie Brown was an English immigrant. After the death of her husband, poverty forced her into prostitution.
And this is the intact photo of the woman that was horribly murdered. It always gets me emotionally when I used to investigate these. You try to keep yourself professional and distant, but whenever I'd walk into a murder scene and there were photos on the dresser or whatever of the people with their families, it just really gets there.
When the body is discovered, the local coroner is called in to survey the carnage. These images of the murder were taken at the time. They are so shocking that we can't show you them in their entirety.
This is how she ends up. These look like mortuary photos. If she was alive during this, she was tortured. If she was dead, she was mutilated. And it's just, nobody should go like this. Nobody.
According to the autopsy, the murderer had a 3-stage MO. Strangulation, ripping open the body, and astonishingly, scattering the entrails on the bed.
I've seen prostitutes mutilated, but I've not seen cases like this. It's a very unique method of operating. This poor lady was gutted like an animal.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
The coroner's report sent the press wild. They jumped to an extraordinary conclusion. A British serial killer was on the loose in New York.
The leap was made that this was the work of Jack the Ripper.
Amazing.
Was this just press hysteria or even a copycat killer? Could the Ripper have traveled 3,000 miles across the Atlantic from his old killing ground? In 1891, Jack the Ripper was the world's most famous killer. He had terrorized London in a series of hideous and highly distinctive murders.
To an expert eye, every serial killer has a signature. With Jack the Ripper, it's as good as his fingerprint. His victims were always prostitutes. He strangled and cut the throat, ripped open the body, removed their entrails, just like the New York victim, Carrie Brown.
If I were investigating both murders at the same time in the same city, I'd be looking, same victim, same type victim anyway, same MO, same signature, to me, same guy. The obvious question is, could Jack the Ripper have come to New York City?
The key in all cold cases is finding the clues missed by the original investigators.
You often need to re-examine the basic evidence. It's amazing what a fresh pair of eyes can do for a case.
Ed wants a new take on the old autopsy. Did the investigators miss anything at the time?
She hasn't just been killed. Once he's killed her, he's continued to work on her body, to do things to her after her death, to open her up. I mean, he's torn her apart and played with her.
Dr. Jonathan Hayes, Manhattan's senior medical examiner, has examined thousands of murder victims. He shows Ed a vital detail.
This doesn't look like an accidental injury. I mean, the two limbs of the X are approximately the same length, and it's a very neat, clearly cut X. So I think that looks like a deliberately inflicted injury.
A little like a marking or something.
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason, he wants to leave this.
Exactly. I don't know
mark.
the significance of the X.
The X can be very significant. A lot of serial killers like to leave their marks. They'll do something at the crime scene. They'll mark the victim. They'll have unique methods of operation, MOs. And they want the attention. They crave it. And sometimes it gets them caught.
The old files have yielded another detail that's caught Ed's expert eye.
Incredible.
A letter to the NYPD with a sinister warning.
You think that Jack the Ripper is in England, but he's not. I'm right here. The next thing you will hear of some woman dead, yours truly, Jack the Ripper.
Jack didn't write the letter after the murder of Carrie Brown, but before. Was the Ripper in New York, watching all the while, waiting to strike again? Is Carrie Brown the clue that will finally reveal his identity?
The Carrie Brown murder has never been solved. If you solve the Carrie Brown murder, you may actually solve the Jack the Ripper killings.
Cold case investigator Ed Norris is on the hunt for the infamous serial killer, Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper is the ultimate serial killer. He's one of the worst killers in the history of the world. And for any detective, this is truly the Holy Grail.
Ed's search takes him to London, the Ripper's killing ground. London's Whitechapel. In the late 19th century, it's the seediest slum in Britain. Squalid, overrun, and difficult to patrol. You can still find the back alleys and courtyards where the Ripper used to hide.
It's like amazing, yeah. It'd be impossible to find anybody.
In the fall of 1888, Jack the Ripper stalked these streets. In just 10 weeks, he butchered at least 5 prostitutes. In the fall of 1888, Jack the Ripper stalked these streets. In just 10 weeks, he butchered at least 5 prostitutes.
And you think about Jack the Ripper as a killer. He took murder to a new level, unprecedented. He became the benchmark for serial killers, the name that everyone remembers, the stuff of nightmares even today.
Ed wants to get into Jack's head and walk in his footsteps. The first crime scene. Durward Street, August 31st, 1888. Jack slashes the throat of prostitute Polly Nichols and cuts into her body.
This is how Jack the Ripper did it. He stalked his victims from behind, grabbed them, exposed the throat, cut them twice, left to right. 1, 2. Took a couple of seconds.
8 days later, the second murder. Streetwalker Annie Chapman has her throat cut, but the brutality is escalating. She's found slashed wide open. The crime scene, Hanbury Street.
Back then, it was a place full of courtyards, back alleys, dark. A great place to evade being detected, much like places I've worked with back alleys like Baltimore. Criminals use local knowledge to get away with their crimes. It's exactly what Jack the Ripper did.
Jack's victims knew the maze-like streets. Ironically, it led them straight to their deaths.
Prostitutes, even today, by nature of what they do, they take their clients to very dark, hidden places to do their work.
So basically, the prostitutes did the work for him. They actually took him to the best place for him to kill them.
But London is a busy city, with people on the street 24 hours a day. Is it really possible no one ever saw Jack? Why are there no witnesses? To find out how Jack got away with it, Ed visits an old London dungeon to see what conditions were like in 1888.
London in those days, much like this location, very, very dark. No ambient light, no store windows, things like that. And you couple that with the fact that people used very low-quality coal to heat their homes and pumped out tons and tons of thick black smoke, essentially putting a black curtain over the city. Let me show you something amazing. Watch this. You can't see me. I'm killing her right now. This is what Jack the Ripper did. This is how easy it was. He's what I call an organized killer. He took advantage of the conditions of the time. Brilliant and very easy.
Next, prostitute Elizabeth Stride has her throat slashed. But this time, something's different.
Yeah, Liz Stride isn't cut open. It's like he was interrupted.
Jack flees the scene. 30 minutes later, a mile away, he goes on the hunt for victim number 4. But how does he get that far, covered in blood, without attracting attention? Smithfield Meat Market is typical of London's Victorian streets. Butchers are everywhere.
This place is full of guys with bloody aprons. They go to pubs, they go to restaurants, no one bats an eyelid. You could see easily why Jack the Ripper could do the same thing in Whitechapel and not raise much suspicion.
Jack's getting bolder. The original autopsy photos show the horrific violence to 4th victim, Catherine Eddowes. Jack ripped her right open and took a kidney. Just days later, a chilling letter is delivered to the police, addressed "From Hell." With it, a human kidney infected with the same rare disease diagnosed in Catherine Eddowes.
Sir, I sent you half the kidney I took from one woman. Preserved it for you. The other half I fried and ate. Very nice. Next time I send you the bloody knife I used. If you only wait. Catch me when you can.
The kidney is long gone. But to Ed, the "From Hell" letter is itself a vital clue to the Ripper.
This little stroke is a temper tick. There is the capacity to explode.
Sheila Kurtz is a forensic handwriting analyst who helped in the Son of Sam case.
These buckles on the K's and these big K's is someone who has a lot of defiance and Now, this is interesting. You see this stroke over here? It's called the breakaway stroke. And that's taking the initiative. So he can take the initiative. If something comes up, he sees the opportunity, he can do it. There are such serious problems in here that I don't think I'd want to be in his company.
No. No. You wouldn't be eating kidney with him.
No. There's such confusion here. And there's something so wrong that it would affect him mentally. So it probably is from hell.
The nightmare grows with every murder. With Mary Kelly, his fifth victim, Jack the Ripper will perfect his signature method of killing. Mary Kelly's remains are brought to this church, St. Leonard's, for autopsy. Unlike previous victims, she was killed in her own bed. Away from the streets, Jack has reached a new level of depravity.
The whole of the surface of the abdomen and the thighs were removed, and the abdominal cavity emptied of its viscera. The tissues of the neck were severed all the way down to the bone. The uterus and kidneys in one breast was under the head. The other breast by the right foot. The liver between the feet and the intestines by the right side. And the spleen by the left side of the body. The pericardium was open and the heart absent.
Makes me sick. It's just gruesome. He just absolutely destroyed this woman. Worse than I've seen an animal butchered. He's a sick puppy. He's a sick man and does terrible things to people.
10 weeks of madness. A gory grand finale. Then the notorious killer vanishes. 3 years later, another prostitute is mutilated in her bed. Only this time, it's in New York.
It doesn't make sense that a guy like Jack the Ripper would just stop. I think he got scared, and I think he took off. And based on what I'm seeing, I think he could have easily picked up in New York right where he left off in London.
August 7, 1891. New York's Lower East Side. Another prostitute is savagely murdered. Pulled from the East River, unidentified, mutilated, just like Carrie Brown.
This particular case is of obvious interest because it's in the same city where Carrie Brown was murdered.
Ed Norris thinks that both these New York murders may be the work of London's Jack the Ripper and a vital clue to his identity. Ed is determined to catch the killer.
Let me put it this way. If someone in your family was a victim of crime, your wife, your mother, your daughter, you'd want me to have the case.
For more than a century, amateur detectives have put forward names for Jack the Ripper. Ed is the first cold case detective to go through the list with a professional eye.
Some of them are ridiculous. I mean, Oscar Wilde's in there, Lewis Carroll, people like that. I mean, they're just absurd.
London historian Richard Jones has spent more than 2 decades studying the Ripper case and investigating the main suspects.
So realistically, how many suspects are there?
I think you could probably break it down to under 10 viable suspects, people who well could have been Jack the Ripper.
So of these likely suspects, how many could have ended up in the United States?
Well, several we do know definitely went to the US, one of them being Severin Klosowski.
First up, Severin Klosowski, a Whitechapel barber who murders his 3 wives. He's in New York when Carrie Brown is killed.
We've got Dr. Tumblety, who's a very distinctive American who most certainly went to America.
Francis Tumblety, an American arrested on suspicion of the London murders. He jumps bail and heads for New York.
And finally, there's James Kelly. He's sent to Broadmoor, escapes from Broadmoor, and thereafter becomes something of a mystery.
James Kelly, a convicted killer, escapes from the Broadmoor lunatic asylum outside London just before the Ripper killings. Ed's now got 3 suspects, and Britain's National Archives might give him the hard evidence It's home to thousands of original police records from the Ripper case.
It's incredible.
And Ed's found just what he needs, a key piece of evidence overlooked in the original inquiry.
This document appears to be creating an offender profile.
Dr. Thomas Bond, Britain's top police surgeon, believed he could get to know killers through the corpses they left behind. He examined all the Ripper's victims and wrote a profile that's a century ahead of its time.
You think of offender profile, you think CSI, FBI, all that crazy stuff. You don't think 120 years in the past that somebody was actually doing it. So it's really important to see what he saw and how he was able to paint a picture of Jack the Ripper for us.
Bond's report describes the murderer's technique in grim and precise detail.
He cut the throats quickly from left to right. His knife was straight, very sharp, and at least 6 inches long with a pointed tip. There's no evidence of struggle from any of the victims because the attacks were so sudden and lethal. His wounds come from a single angle. The killer acted alone.
Bond describes a monster, outwardly respectable, unassuming, and neatly attired, inwardly a brooding, vengeful maniac. Ed now has a very clear profile of the killer.
He sounds typical of serial killers of today. To me, he sounds like the kind of guy that would get along in society pretty much, every day, but capable of terrible things once that button was pushed.
Now Ed knows the kind of man he's looking for and has a plan to find him.
I want to take the Bond report, which is a great tool. I want to take the characteristics and the traits he gives us that went unused, unfortunately.
I want to take those and use them to narrow down the list of suspects who could have gone to America.
It's time for Ed to shorten his list. Severin Klasowski.
Although he's a killer, and he's put to death for it, he kills his wives by poisoning. Poisoning your spouse is a totally different thing than cutting the throat of a stranger and then taking out their organs. So the gap between Klasowski and the Jack the Ripper killings is enormous.
Francis Tumblety.
I don't like Tumblety. He had no violent history. He certainly had no violence toward women anywhere in his record. I just don't get it. And then you couple that with the fact he's enormous. He's very tall for that time in history. He's got an enormous mustache. He's a quack doctor. He's a character. He's somebody that really, really sticks out. So certainly now someone's going to blend into society. So this guy ain't your guy.
That leaves James Kelly. As a young man, he escaped from a lunatic asylum and was a named suspect in the Ripper inquiries.
A light bulb goes on for somebody because right after Mary Kelly's murder, very shortly thereafter, the police go out looking for Kelly. So that tells you something. Somebody was looking this guy very hard.
Before the police get close, Kelly flees, and they lose interest. But that's not good enough for Ed. Kelly is now his prime suspect, but Ed knows there's a long haul ahead.
I'm interested in Kelly. I got to know more. What was his mental state? Was there any medical reports about his mental capacity? Could he be a serial killer? And did he go to New York to kill Carrie Brown?
Is this the face of Jack the Ripper? Cold case detective Ed Norris is tracking Jack the Ripper across 2 continents. Could he be on the verge of solving the world's most famous cold case? He now has a name for his prime suspect. James Kelly, convicted killer, psychiatric patient, escape artist. He is a man with a vicious past. In 1883, less than a month into his marriage, Kelly argues with his wife, accusing her of having an affair, and then plunges a knife into her neck. To track his suspect, Ed travels to Kelly's last known address, the Broadmoor Lunatic Asylum outside London, home to Britain's most dangerous criminals.
Kelly's in Broadmoor for killing. We know he's a killer. He's killed his wife. So I know some. I need to know more. What kind of state of mind did he have? Does he have the capacity to be a serial killer? And beyond that, where was he? I know he's on the run, but where exactly?
Here, Kelly's psychiatric report has been sealed for over 125 years. But now, Ed has unique access.
I couldn't tell you how excited I am, because his Broadmoor file is extremely important to this investigation.
The documents revealed that Kelly was sentenced to hang, but then events took a crucial turn. His boss came forward with new evidence about Kelly's disturbed state of mind.
When I arrived, I found him lying on a couch. When I spoke to him, he scarcely seemed to understand what I said to him and complained of great pains to his head. He would drop his tools and begin muttering to himself as though his mind was wandering. In fact, it seemed to me that he had completely lost the use of his mental faculties.
A doctor decides Kelly is insane, and he's sent to the Broadmoor Lunatic Asylum.
The psychological report was amazing. If you look at what the doctor said about him, he was capable of fits of explosive rage without much provocation. He sounds typical of serial killers of today, where people actually function in society, but do awful things when they're actually killing people. So to me, he fits. I like Kelly. He's got a lot of things to like as a suspect.
In the asylum, Kelly is a model patient, playing his violin and working in the carpentry shop. But privately, he's a man obsessed with a secret plan.
One of the most interesting things I find out about Kelly is the way he actually escapes. He didn't just jump a fence or grab a laundry bag. This guy took a piece of metal and fashions a key that allows him to escape. So it tells me, if nothing else, this guy's no dope. He's very cunning, and he planned this escape for a long time.
Though every cop in Britain is looking for him, Kelly disappears for the next 40 years. Then, in 1927, an aging James Kelly appears at the door of the Broadmoor Asylum.
The obvious question is, what's Kelly been doing for the past 40 years? You know what? He answers that question himself.
A record of Kelly's extraordinary confession survives in the archive. Ed Norris is the first detective to investigate it. It describes a man deeply uncomfortable with society.
I can't explain this, but I know that it could not click on with most people in the outside world. I had to contend with all the time with envy, jealousy, and malice. Kind of thing has become horrible because of all kinds of skank. It refers basically to women of low moral character, be a prostitute or the like. He says here, been on the warpath since I left Broadmoor Asylum. The word warpath to me speaks volumes about what he's doing. He's paranoid, he's got delusions, he's already killed somebody, he's confined to a mental hospital, but is cunning enough to escape. He sounds like, a real classic example of your serial killer.
Then Ed finds a small but critical detail. Kelly's job.
I learned in the case file that Kelly is an upholsterer.
To Ed, this reveals a vital piece of the puzzle. The murder weapon.
Oh, my father was a butcher. He sharpened our knives every day in the house.
The knives have to be sharp, so they cut through quickly and save time.
Right. And was these something that'll be used at that era?
Yeah, these are probably about the right sort of time. They've got a nice long curved blade which will aid slashing away the fabrics.
If you're an upholsterer, you're going to be good with a knife. You're going to be strong. You're going to know how to use this tool, and you can certainly use it as a weapon.
As an upholsterer, James Kelly did to furniture what Jack the Ripper did to his victims. Ed's closing in on his suspect, and Kelly's confession contains one more secret. He admits after his escape, he goes to London. It's 1888, the year of the Ripper.
I think this guy is great for Jack the Ripper. You have a guy that's committed a murder with a knife by killing his own wife, by cutting her throat, and he tells us that he goes to London, which is perfect because it's just in time for the beginning of the Ripper killings.
Immediately, there's a spate of attacks on women. Annie Millwood, stabbed repeatedly. Ada Wilson, slashed in the throat. Martha Tabram, stabbed 23 times.
It's as if the guy is learning
23 times.
It's as if the guy is learning a craft that he loves, and he gets better at it every day.
This looks like the Ripper's early work to Ed.
By the time he gets to Mary Kelly, this guy's at the apex of his game. So he has Mary Kelly in a locked room. He kills her. He totally destroys her. Whatever motivates him, as sick as it sounds, it's clear that he enjoyed himself fully at this point and spent a long time with the body. For him, this is the pinnacle of his killing career.
A few days after the last victim is killed, the police go to James Kelly's old address, where he murdered his wife, but he's not there. There's no follow-up. The police are overwhelmed by the Ripper crisis, and the case against Kelly goes cold.
I have seen this literally hundreds of times. You have to be relentless in your pursuit. You have to go to many locations. You just don't go to his last address and give up. If I had heard about James Kelly as a suspect during the Jack the Ripper case, there wouldn't have been a door on the hinges in London. I would have been to every address he could have possibly been at. Everybody who might have known his whereabouts would have been arrested or at least questioned, and questioned thoroughly about where he could have been. No stone would have gone unturned for this guy. I don't know why it didn't happen, frankly.
Kelly disappears, but his confession tells us very clearly where he went. America. Cold case detective Ed Norris is searching for history's greatest serial killer, Jack the Ripper. His chief suspect is James Kelly, a psychotic wife killer on the run from a lunatic asylum. Ed's tracked Kelly to London and put him in the frame for the Ripper killings.
I feel good about Kelly right now. He could be the guy.
Ed has uncovered 2 bloody murders in New York matching the Ripper's gruesome M.O. There's a psycho on the loose, but could it be Kelly?
If I can put him in New York City at the time of the Carrie Brown murder, I'd be very excited.
Kelly's confession already places him in the United States.
He gives an account of where he was, and where he was all over the place. He comes to America many times, not just once. It's a great piece of evidence.
Kelly's in America, but Ed needs to tie him to the murder of the New York prostitutes. How can Ed track his suspect 120 years after the crime? At Britain's National Maritime Museum, they keep a record of every ship to have crossed the Atlantic in the 19th century, including the one Kelly took to the USA.
He actually tells you in the letter that he leaves aboard a ship called the Zandam from Rotterdam to New York City. In my experience, criminals make things up sometimes. I want to see if there's any truth to this. Does this ship actually exist, and would it have sailed around that time, and is it possible?
Kelly's in the right city, but the key to this case is timing.
If I in fact find that the Zandam arrived in New York City in time for the murder of Carrie Brown, it'd make me feel a lot better about Kelly, and as a likely suspect for the Carrie Brown murder.
The Ripper's last appearance in London was November 1888. Carrie Brown was killed in New York, April of 1891.
Zandam, there we go. All right. Zandam, Rotterdam. There it is. Got it. Tells me the Zandam went from Rotterdam to New York in time for the Carrie Brown murder. Apparently arrived about October 7th, 1890. So a good couple months right before, so perfect.
Kelly's ship was just one carrying thousands of people from London every week. But Kelly has problems. He's a known killer on the run. How does a wanted man get into New York?
Back in the 1890s, before the establishment of Ellis Island, coming in and out of the city was a lot easier, much less bureaucratic.
Professor Dan Sitram has examined 19th century immigration and the loopholes that could allow a killer into the country.
Before passports, before driver's licenses, photo IDs of all kind, people could come and go in a much more easy fashion.
You could totally start your life over.
That's right, and that was the attraction of a place like New York for an awful lot of people who were trying to remake themselves, trying to escape a crime or whatever it might be.
To help him blend into the crowd, Kelly changes his name to John Miller, one of the most common names among immigrants in America.
He becomes one of thousands of John Millers. It's like a disguise. The guy clearly knows what he's doing, because it's a classic trick for people on the run. And then he can disappear in New York.
He's able to get work. There's an upholstery trade there, so he's got money. And best of all, it's full of prostitutes, so he can continue doing what he was doing in London.
In New York, without the cops breathing down his neck, James Kelly, alias John Miller, alias Jack the Ripper, could dive back into his work. And knowing Kelly's history, Ed now discovers a new pattern to the killings. One that may explain the X that was carved into New York prostitute Carrie Brown. What if the X wasn't a letter, but a number?
The X could be significant because if you accept there are 5 victims, we all accept that. If you put in the other 3 that are widely accepted beyond the 5, that's 8. You include his wife, that's number 9. Carrie Brown could be number 10, and the X could signify the Roman numeral 10, his 10th victim.
With 10 deaths on the books, the case against Kelly gets more pressing. But before Ed can finally nail his suspect, he needs eyewitness corroboration. 80 years after his death, James Kelly is about to face a criminal lineup. In the hunt for Jack the Ripper, Ed Norris is closing in on his prime suspect. James Kelly, a psychotic wife killer who escaped from a lunatic asylum and spent 40 years on the run. From deep in a century-old archive, Ed has found a surviving picture of his target. Now, Ed plans to use a modern forensic technique to see what secrets the old photo can reveal.
So we're going to take that photo of him at 67 and see if it's possible to de-age the photo. They've used this in the past, the other way. I've taken photos of children and tried to age them into adults if they're missing. I've taken suspects who are on the run as young men to try to age them to what they look like now. I've never used it in the reverse. I want to see if it's possible.
Steve Mancusi was the NYPD's senior forensic artist for nearly 30 years, helping to crack some of its most difficult cases. Now he's going to remove 40 years from James Kelly's photo.
As you get older, all that gravity sets in, and your face starts to droop. We clean him up a little bit, give him more of a younger, brighter look. We're toning his body down a little bit, starting to darken up his hair.
I've never seen it done in reverse.
His eyes were an issue early on, so we give him a little bit younger, brighter expression. Forensic art really brings a very interesting part to an investigation. A lot of times it will pull the proverbial rabbit out of the hat. When you have nothing, it gives you something. In 1888, there was a certain style to the hair and to the mustache. And there he is as a younger man.
Ed's next step, put Kelly's face next to the Ripper's. Steve Mancusi pulls up the best image we have of Jack the Ripper. 19th century witness statements had enough detail to produce a modern sketch. It shows a man in his early 30s with a mustache and hat.
He seemed to be wearing one of these felt hats. That's how the witness saw him. So let's take Kelly and put a similar hat on him so we get the sense of how he may have looked.
Jack the Ripper, side by side with the young James Kelly.
That's amazing. Just so afraid it's going to be completely different.
This could hit home run status.
Now I feel better than ever about this guy. As we say in the police world, he looks good. And I think we may have actually put a face on Jack the Ripper.
With the evidence against Kelly mounting, Ed returns to the remarkable confession Kelly made at the end of his life. Scattered throughout the text are references to the American cities he visited.
Serial killers, even today, travel extensively because they don't want to be detected. Even now, he'll drive thousands of miles in a short time. They go across state lines, kill people, drive a few states away, kill someone else. This guy traveled everywhere. It's quite unusual, especially given how hard it must have been then.
Using Kelly's confession and old newspaper reports, Ed can track him from coast to coast.
What I'd like to do is plot the cities where he claims to have been in the United States, and then compare that with the headlines of the day and see if it's possible that he was in the cities where these crimes took place.
New Jersey.
You know, Trenton Times covered them. They put him right here. He also puts himself here about that time. And there's several murders that are very similar as well. The newspapers are concerned. Same question, is this the work of Jack the Ripper? Is this the fiend of Whitechapel?
Galveston, Texas.
The headline reads, "Has Jack the Ripper invaded Texas at last?" Horrible case, terrible murder. Body ripped open, intestines pushed aside. A lot of similarities to the Whitechapel Murders. Her womb cut open, exposing the foot of a fetus. And again, she was, quote, of low character. Just like Carrie Brown and all the prostitutes in Whitechapel. He claims to have worked in Dallas. All the traveling he's done, Galveston's a hop for this guy.
California.
1894 and 1895. Brutal murders out here. San Francisco. Butchered and burned by an unknown fiend. Brutal stab wounds to the face. People in California felt the same way at the time. New York City felt the same way. Had Jack the Ripper come to the U.S.? We know he puts himself in all these cities coincidentally. I don't know. After 24 years as a cop, I don't believe in coincidence all that much.
12 murders across 5 states in 4 years.
My hunch? I think it's very possible he came to the U.S. and did exactly the same thing he did in London.
Kelly died in 1929, taking his secrets to the grave. But has Ed Norris finally uncovered the truth? Was James Kelly Jack the Ripper?
Piece by piece, it might be circumstantial. But put it together, as far as I'm concerned, it's close to airtight. You've got a man that killed his own wife. He has severe mental problems. He escapes from an asylum right before the Ripper killings begin. He's in London for all the Ripper killings. He escapes to New York right before the slayings there kick off. He travels across the U.S., and along his trail are murders fitting the Ripper's M.O. Kelly matches the psychological profile of Jack the Ripper. And his age-regressed mugshot is a dead ringer for the Ripper sketch. There's no doubt in my mind we found Jack the Ripper.